Well, good afternoon. I was trying to connect to that last session because this is my first time working in the philanthropic world, so I had 25 years in agribusiness. And I was one of those guys that was out on Wall Street, and we raised $600 million to build what is now called Premium Standard Farms in northern Missouri. And I can tell you that people with many resources have many problems, environment, welfare, all this, but people who are hungry have one problem. And, you know, as I've traveled around Africa and India and you see people that are hungry, and by the way, their animals are even more hungry, it really sort of changes my paradigm of how I think about what we're doing. So I work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I've worked there going on 3 years now, and I just wanted to give you a little commercial here for a second. The foundation started in the year 2000. Melinda actually was running it at that time. Warren Buffett's money came in 2006, and then Bill officially came over in 2008, and he's there literally every day when he's in the States. He's very active in the foundation. The foundation has 3 areas where we put our money. 25% goes in the U.S., 25% in global development, that's the area I work in, and 50% in global health, dealing with vaccines. You'll probably hear about our polio campaign and malaria, trying to eradicate polio and malaria. That whole pyramid, that area of giving in 2011 was about $3.2 billion. So under global development, we have 5 areas that we focus on. And ag development happens to be the biggest one, but not the only one. We also focus on financial services for the poor. Mobile money, mobile banking on the phone in Kenya is a big deal. Water, sanitation, and hygiene. I mean, it's not all about vaccines. If people don't have access to clean water and hygiene, then all the vaccines in the world won't solve their problem. Global libraries, trying to learn some of the lessons that have happened in the developed world and apply those in the less developed world. Then we have special initiatives when there's something like floods or hurricanes in Haiti. We'll go down there and help. But in general, we don't go in conflict or in emergency situations. We really like to go in afterwards and then fix it after. Our target audience really is those that make less than $1 a day, less than $2 a day, $1 and $2 a day. And we work primarily in Africa and India because if you look at the demographics, 80% of those that make less than $1 or $2 a day are in Africa and India. People say, why don't you work in South America and China? You know, there's poverty there too. That's true, but our program in ag is about 4 years old, so we're just starting, so we thought we'd sort of attack where the biggest factor is. We have, over the last 4 years, we've put about $2 billion in agriculture. It sounds like a lot of money, but we represent about 5% of all ag development funding, so we're really encouraged to collaborate and leverage where we can. You know, when you think about agriculture in the developed world, there's what, less than 1% of the population is involved in it today. If you look in the less developed world, it's two-thirds of the people in agriculture work in agriculture, and it represents 1/3 of the GDP. It's a big source of income. Having said that, of all ag funding, I'm going to talk about livestock in a minute, livestock gets about 2.5% of the ag funding. So you'll see in a minute, livestock can represent 1/3 of the income, but gets 2 to 3% of the funding. There are about close to 1 billion livestock keepers now in the world, so it's a big source of asset for them and revenue. These are the things people think about when they see livestock. It's an asset, so you can sell it, you can trade it for your child's education. When your child's sick, you can sell some chickens. When your daughter gets married, you give away 5 cows as part of the dowry, and of course they have to have nice long horns. Nutrition, it's obvious, a source of nutrition. It's a source of income, so when you have incremental eggs or milk, you'll sell that. And also, it's a source of farmer productivity. 50% of the plows are pulled by an animal. There's not John Deere tractors driving around Africa, as you might imagine. And also, some people keep animals just for their manure, especially in India. When you have a male cow, for religious reasons, they don't consume it, so it produces manure for them. We talk a lot about the livestock ladder. People don't just appear with a dairy cow. They start with a chicken. In fact, and women deal with most of the animals for sure the chickens and the small ruminants, the sheep and goats. And then they go to a local cow, and then sort of the Mercedes-Benz of animals is the dairy cow. And I was at a farm in India one day, and it was a very poor farm, by the way, and they had dairy cows. I said, where are your chickens? And they said, those are for poor people. So even within the animal kingdom, in a sense, you see this discrepancy of saying, try to move up as fast as you can on that livestock ladder. It's a great area because when you look at the year 2050, the FAO is projecting the growth rate for animal source foods to be 150 to 170%, depending on the area you're looking at, primarily driven by population growth, but also due to income growth and dietary shifts. As this urbanization is occurring around the world, you're going to see more animal source foods, convenient foods in the diet. I did not want to be remiss and say, look, we know land degradation is an issue with livestock, water depletion, zoonotic diseases, climate change, biodiversity. And so when we write our grants, when we do things in livestock, we do need to have plans for these issues, not communication plans in your speak, but remediation plans in our speak. So if someone says, oh, you're bringing in new genetics, what are you going to do about the indigenous genetics? We have a plan that we can show what we're doing to address biodiversity and maintain biodiversity. So we address those kind of things in our grants. We also work across the entire value chain, from the supply side on the left with genetics, nutrition, and health, all the way to the consumer. And I have some of our grants on the bottom listed. You can see stem cells and dairy genetics. I'm going to show you one of those in a video next. But just to say, we don't do a silo approach where we just address one part of a value chain. We actually transcend it, because what was mentioned by Scott about Norman Borlaug, take it to the farmer. We can't just sit on the research side and say, geez, we hope they get it someday. We really need to address the entire chain in our grants. So what I'd like to do is show you a very brief 2-minute video of one of our grants. You might want to turn down the music on this if it's too loud. project that we funded with Heifer International. They call it East Africa Dairy Development, and we funded the 10,000 liter chilling tanks. It's the one thing they couldn't afford. They had the cows, they had the producing milk, and that was about a $42 million project to get that cooperative started. Now when you visit those cooperatives, you see banks set up next to them, you see vet shops next to them, you see little groceries, because when the farmers bring their milk in, they want to buy supplies. It's just interesting to even see the whole knock-on effects with the rural economic development. So that's an exciting project. Let me just end with this slide. We really are optimistic. You know, poverty rates for, when you look back in 1992, 30% of the world was less than $2 a day. Now it's like 20%, so it's headed in the right direction. We're not at the end game yet, but it's going in the right way. And even improved governance. 25 years ago, there were 3 countries in Africa that had what we would think of as democratic elections, and now that's as many as 40. You may say, well, they're not all great democratic elections, they need to be audited, but there's 40 countries doing it now from 3. Technologies and phones, you know, my cell phone here works better in Africa than it does in the States, quite frankly. They completely leapfrogged the landline situation, and so what technologies do we have in agriculture that we can use so they can leapfrog the lessons we've had here? And then also the Millennium Development Goals and CADUP. You know, CADUP really was a challenge to say, can you put a bigger part of your national budget into agriculture? It used to be like 1 or 2%, and CADUP says all countries ought to do 10%. And a number of them are doing that today. So it's really great to see the countries coming along and funding agriculture to a greater degree. So we're really optimistic and pleased to be here today. From a communication standpoint, I'm not a communications person, so you'll have to figure out how to take these messages and form them, but it's a great job, I must tell you. Thanks so much. Yep.